Welcome into the first edition of Meet the Bird Gang for the 2020 Orleans Firebirds season. Jacob Kronberg with Brandon Ross, Chris Sacchi, and the manager of the Orleans Firebirds, Kelly Nicholson. Kelly, you've been with the team for 19 years, and I know there's a lot of team memories, but what is your relationship like with individual players as the years have gone on?
Well, my wife and I was recently married December 28th to my lovely wife. It was Miss Donna. We have to start calling her Mrs. Donna now. For the past, and she's been to a lot of them. How many dinners have you been to, honey?
9, maybe.
She's been to 9. I think this year was going to be our 12th annual spring training reunion dinner. So what we try and do are the guys that play for us in Orleans that are in spring training in Arizona, we invite them to dinner. And it's been a great tradition that we've established. We go to PF Chang's in Scottsdale. We've gone there every year except for one. It's 7135 East Camelback Road. I know the address because we've been doing it for so long. But I think this year we had 25 guys RSVP'd and said that they were going to show up. So it's cool to stay in touch with those guys that way via a dinner. It's nice that they get to connect with one another. They might be in the same organization and they don't even realize that they both played in the same summer league on the same team. So that's been cool. But if a player like a Stroman comes in to pitch against the Angels, or Eric Lauer comes in to pitch against the Dodgers, when he was with San Diego, I know Eric's with Milwaukee now. We'll try to go down and watch them play and just say hello and try to touch with them that way via text, wishing them good luck. They have a good outing, but it's more texts and a quick hello at a major league park, and then the reunion dinner has been great to stay connected with all those players.
What's a top story you have from one of those dinners if you're getting 25 guys together?
Well, I can tell you a funny story about Eric Lauer, and he had just gotten called up. And the Padres were in Washington, D.C., and they had a night game, and they flew out to L.A., and they were staying in Pasadena. And Eric and I were going to get together because they had an off day. And so we were going to get together, and I called him. I finished school, and I called Eric, and he picked up the phone, and I said, "Where are you staying, Eric?" And he said, "Well, we're at the Ritz-Carlton." And I thought they were at the Ritz-Carlton downtown, which is about 10 minutes from Loyola High School. So I thought, this is going to be easy, right? I'll hop in my car and I'll be with Eric, and we'll go down to LA Live, and it'll be easy. And I asked Eric, I said, "Where are you staying?" And he says, "I don't know." He was a rookie. He'd taken a red eye that night. They land in LA, they hop on the bus, and they go to some hotel, and he has no idea where they are. I said, "Well, Eric, I need to know what hotel you're in and what city you're in if I'm going to come pick you up." So I thought it was just really funny that a major leaguer had just gotten called up, taken a red eye, arrived at the hotel, probably right 4 or 5 in the morning, had no idea where he was staying. He put the phone down and went over and looked at the address, probably on the desk next to the bed, right the nightstand next to the bed, and gave me the address of the Ritz-Carlton in Pasadena. And I thought, oh man, this is going to take me an hour and a half to get to after school, getting to Pasadena from downtown LA. But it wasn't too bad. But it was really great to see him and spend time and have a meal with him.
So you've mentioned some of those names that make their way to the Cape every year for Orleans, the guys like a Daniel Lynch or a Marcus Stroman, and you've probably had some good combinations of guys. Over your 19 years in Orleans, what's the most memorable team that sticks out to you?
Well, they're all hopefully the 2021 team is going to be the most memorable. It's hard to forget. It's hard to not mention the 2005 team. It was my first year as a manager, and those guys wound up winning the Cape League title, and I still keep in touch with a lot of those guys. I think anytime you win a championship, it's a little bit, the bond is a little more special. and the group remains a little tighter for a lot longer. So that '05 team was pretty special. But I was extremely proud of I think our 2015 team was probably as good as any team that we've had up there. 2017 was an awfully good team as well. And I was really extremely proud of our guys last summer, the 2019 team. I don't think when June 10th rolls around, I don't think you're going to see a lot of those guys popped in the top 5 rounds. They're going to be a few, but it's not going to be like we had in 17, where it was Lynch and Rollison and Logan Gilbert. And I forget what the total signing bonuses were of that 2017 team, but it was kind of silly. I don't have it at the tip of my fingers right now, but that was a extremely talented team.
You've had so many players from Orleans make it to the major leagues in some capacity. So what is it about your pitching philosophy that advances so many young guys?
Well, that's a good question, Chris. I think the main thing is we get really good arms in the summer, and that's a very good pitching coach there. We have one right now, Matt True, but we've had Jason Brown, who was our pitching coach. Most recently, he was a catching coach for the New York Yankees, and now he's going to be in the bullpen this year with the Angels. We've had Robert Woodard as a pitching coach who pitched at Chatham my very first year in '05. And Woody, once he finished playing, wanted to coach. And I told him that when he was finished, we would love to have him in Orleans. And he was our pitching coach one summer. Jamie Quinn has been our pitching coach. I think Q might be the only guy that's been the pitching coach where we had 3 first-rounders on one staff in 2017. So that was cool, and Ryan Rollison and Daniel Lynch and Logan Gilbert. And Q did a great job mentoring those guys. But we've always had really good coaches. When I first started in '05, we had Chris Beck, and Seebeck did a great job with our pitchers. So have good coaches and you have elite arms that we get in the summer, then it should be a good pitching staff. And that's what we've had in our 19 summers up there. I think probably if you ask people around the Cape and around baseball and asked them kind of what Orleans is known for, it would probably be our pitching. Of course, it doesn't hurt that we're 434 feet to dead center either. So our ballpark can play kind of big.
Well, that leads to the next thing. You mentioned you have top talent coming in every year. So what are you looking at with these guys that have the top level universities and all that training during the year? What are you looking at to work on with them in summer ball?
Yeah, Jake, here's what we look for when we recruit pitching. What are we looking for? Or when we recruit position guys, what are we looking for? Are you referring to the pitching? What are we looking for when we try to bring arms in?
Partially that, and part of like you're physically working with them when they're up in the Cape.
Gotcha. Well, to be honest with you, Jake, we don't do a whole lot with them in the summer. We will ask them what they've been working on in the spring, what they want to get out of the summer, the 1 or 2 things that they want to try to improve on so that when they go back to Louisville or Virginia or Loyola Marymount or USC or wherever they go, we just want to try to help them with that process. And then if we see anything that we think we can help them with, we might offer a little food for thought. Say, hey, we see this. What do you think about this? Maybe this would help you. But before we would do that, we would always make sure and call their college coach, say, hey, we're thinking about doing this with Joe Smith. Here's some video. Here's what we see. Here's what our plan of attack is. Do we have your support with it? So before we ever try to change anybody or help somebody, we're not trying to change them, just help them along. We would always get the blessing of their college coach.
You mentioned earlier that most of the time you kind of just let the guys show themselves off and you work on things with them kind of as they go through, things that either you guys notice or they pick up on. What's the most you've seen a single player grow over the course of a summer?
Well, that's a good question, Matt. And 4 guys really come to mind. Matt Duffy, who has been in the major leagues for quite some time now, was a shortstop at Long Beach State, and he came up to Orleans as a temporary player and wound up, he and his roommate, both, Ben Waldrop, were both temp guys. And they wound up staying the whole summer, and they wound up starting in the All-Star game, both of them. So that was really cool to see Duff's development from temporary guy to big leaguer. And he's been in the big leagues, like I said, for a long time, and make that All-Star team. And then even last year, a kid by the name of Max Troiani, who came up from Bentley College, he had a very nice internship set up in Boston. He was going to be with us for 2 weeks. And long story short, he stays the whole summer. Not only does he make the Cape League All-Star team, but he makes the All-Cape team. About 350. I was in the top 5 or 10 of in batting in the Cape League. I think it's closer to the top 5. Was at the top of the batting race all summer long, and just had an incredible summer. Had this COVID-19 thing not popped up, I'm sure that he would have been a pretty good draft pick, a really good senior sign. And then, of course, Daniel Lynch. Daniel Lynch did not have a good spring at Virginia the summer prior to him coming to Orleans. In fact, and Daniel and he's a kid that I stay in touch with, that we text back and forth quite a bit. But I was really concerned about it because when you look at his spring numbers, if you go back and look at Lynch's numbers in 2017 at Virginia, they were not very good. But what he didn't do when what I wasn't worried about his ERA. He was striking guys out, and he didn't walk people. And those guys that can do that and that are left-handed have a lot of success on the Cape. So, and then he had a crazy summer. And next thing you know, he's a first rounder and he's $3 million richer or whatever, $2 million richer. And he's a first rounder, and now he's throwing the ball 96 to 98. And again, he might've had a shot of being in the big leagues this year. And then another kid I think of lastly is from last summer's team, Shea Whitcomb, a temp guy, Division II guy. And man, I'm hoping he gets popped June 10th. Not in the first round, but in the draft. I think he can really hit. And he was on the map at UC San Diego, but he hit 8 homers last summer in the Cape, which is a lot. The dude can hit and is a Hall of Fame young man. So kind of those 4 guys, when you ask me about kind of cool stories, Duffy, Troiani, Lynch, Whitty, really proud of those guys, and to see how much they progressed during the summer.
And Coach, before we get into your own pitching career at Loyola Marymount and then your coaching career at Loyola High School as well, I'd like to ask you, I'm fascinated by how pitchers develop, and Stephen Wright, who you had in 2005, is a fascinating case. Of course, everyone knows him now that are baseball fans as a knuckleball pitcher, but he didn't develop it until 2011. Was he toying around with the knuckleball at that point, or was he firmly just a traditional pitcher?
Well, yeah, to show you how much I know, he was right. He was a starter with the Red Sox, and he was our closer in 2005. Righty was just a strike throwing machine. Probably threw the ball low 90s, but just a strike throwing machine. When you look at his numbers in 05 and look at his numbers at Hawaii, and had an outstanding summer for us. Was Righty messing around with that knuckleball? Man, that was a long time ago. That was 15 years ago. He was probably messing around with it a little bit in the bullpen, like some of those pitchers do. But I think, and I remember talking to Righty about it, he was on his way out of baseball because his stuff wasn't allowing him to be successful in pro ball. And he got together with some knuckleball guys that had been big leaguers and guys that had thrown that knuckleball, and they really helped him with his development of that thing. And man, until he got hurt at Dodger Stadium, pinch running in a crazy freak accident, Righty was on his way to just solidifying himself and being in the Red Sox rotation and being a knuckleballer. So I hope he gets healthy and back on track.
So a little more into the Cape League as a whole. It's regarded nationwide as the top college baseball summer league. And unfortunately, the 2020 guys are not going to have a chance to come up there. What makes the league so special, and what kind of things are the players missing out on due to the lack of a season?
Well, Jake, those players are going to miss out on the same things that you guys miss out. I know all you guys go to Syracuse, but those 60 nights on the Cape are pretty special. And the thing that those players and the interns and the broadcasters and the coaches and everybody that's involved with the Cape, the most important thing they miss out on are the relationships and the friendships they build. And, they're going to play with some of their teammates, but they're going to play against some of the best players in the country. And then they're going to play against those guys in pro ball and eventually get to the major leagues. And, they're going to have that Cape experience to fall back on. So it's all about the relationships. That's the disappointing. The Cape it's a difficult experience to talk about. You have to be a part of it, and you have to be in it, and you have to kind of be in the daily process of what goes on up there and doing the same thing night after night. And you literally, my wife and I talk, we'll literally lose track of days. We won't, because every day's the same, right? I get up at 6:30. We go to the Chatham Perk. I'm in the clubhouse at 7:30. We're posting the lineup. We go to clinics. He picks me up, go to lunch, nap, pow, at 2:30. I'm back to the ballpark. And then you get home she'll drop me off at 2:30 and 2:45. And we joke, she'll say, yeah, see you at 11, right? She's like the news people, see you at 11. We might have a chance to get a little bite to eat, and you just hit repeat the next day. But it's really about the relationships. And when those guys are playing in the Cape League, Jacob, and I tell them this, when they're playing, when those 5 games in the Cape League are going on every night, they're playing in one of the 5 best amateur games probably in the world, excluding the USA team. And that's kind of the cool part of it, just to realize that, wow, these are the best amateur guys in the country. Who's going to be the next Stroman or the next Lauer, or the next Wieters, or the next Brandon Crawford? So it's cool and it's fun, but I'm really sad for the 2020 Birds that they didn't get to share their relationships with one another and develop really great friendships.
So you mentioned grabbing a bite to eat with your wife at 11 effort. So I've had the pleasure of watching dozens of Cape League games over my life. I go up every summer. But so what's the go-to spot to eat for you, and what spots to eat in Orleans are you telling the guys who most of them are not coming from that area?
Well, Joe Mama's, my wife and I live in Chatham during the summer. Don't tell anybody that. They might fire me knowing that the Orleans manager lives in Chatham. But Joe Mama's is a favorite. It was just about every morning for breakfast and bagels, and they have great sandwiches for lunch, and our guys go there a lot. But the Land Ho is a staple, and Rock Harbor Grill is great. There are a lot of great places to go in Orleans. A couple of our favorites, the Knack is good. My wife said the Knack is good. And we also there's a place called the Ocean House that Stevie Englert, the manager at Harwich, has turned us on to. It's a beautiful restaurant on the water. It's called the Ocean House. And then there's another place in Dennisport, I believe it's in Dennis, called the Cape Sea Grill. That, boy, what a place. But one of my favorite things to do is, if we have an off night, is just to go to Emac and Bolio's and get some ice cream and rest and spend time with Donna. And she's always great about making us a home cooked meal, because we don't get those very often. We just get them on off nights. But if we're going to go out, it's probably going to be to one of those places.
All right, so I'm the antithesis of Jacob here. I have never been to Cape Cod, and I was really excited to get to experience it. So of any of those places you mentioned, what's probably the first place I should go whenever I get the chance to go to the Cape?
Oh, boy. Well, if you're in Orleans, I'd go to the Land Ho. My first night in Orleans, after I touch down in Boston and take the bus to Hyannis and kind of get my luggage unloaded, my first meal is always at the Land Ho. They have great fish and chips. It's always packed. They sponsor the Birds. They're great. the Murphy family. But boy, Cape Sea Grill and Rock Harbor Grill is in Orleans as well, and that is outstanding. But boy, you're not going to go wrong with the Ocean House or the Cape Sea Grill.
So we're going to stay a little more like non-baseball on the Cape. When I go to Cape Cod, I think you got the beaches, you got good seafood, you've got baseball, but you've also got a lot of mini golf.
Right. I have to tell you, Jacob,
mini golf spot.
Our players like to do that. I haven't been mini golfing one time in my 19 summers there.
Really?
And I've probably, my wife has been much better about getting me to go to the beach, just to take a walk on the beach. But before she kind of insisted on that, just to kind of unwind a little bit, I didn't get down to the beach very much either. But now that time between clinic and the time between clinic ending and going back to the ballpark at 2:30, sometimes we'll get a bite to eat and take a little walk on the beach. And yeah, it's a nice little way to unwind. But yeah, mini golf, no. Haven't done the mini golf thing.
All right, Coach. Obviously, something I want to ask you about is you trained with Team USA arms before the 2000 play. I don't know, you have arms in there like Ben Cheech, John Roush, Roy Oswald, but you also had Tommy Lasorda, who was managing the team, and Phil Reagan, who was most recently the Mets pitching coach and who pitched a long time in Major League Baseball. How involved with you were guys like Lasorda and Reagan, and Reggie Smith was also a coach? What was that
well,
like?
I was with it was the summer of 2000, and I was with the collegiate national team. And I had been coaching at Loyola Marymount, and our season ended, and our head coach was going to be an assistant on the USA team. Mike Gillespie was going to be the skipper. Well, Skip and John Savage were still back in Omaha. And I walked into Cruiser's office. I was on campus, and I walked into Cruiser's office knowing that those guys were still in Omaha and knowing that he was getting ready to go over to Arizona. They trained in Tucson at the time. And I said, hey, what are you going to do? Are you going to go run Team USA all by yourself? Just kind of joking, right? And he goes, do you want to go with me? And I said, are you serious? And I said, yeah, I'd love to go. So I went over, and I was a temporary pitching coach for John Savage. And then Jason Gill filled in as one of the other assistants. I forget who the other assistant was. It wasn't there on time. But Gilly and I went over and with Cruiser and just helped with Team USA until Skip and everybody got back from Omaha. John Savage got back from Omaha. But that was cool. Those were 5 of the best baseball days of my life. We did get a suit up one night. We got to put the USA uniform on, and we played Mexico, and it was a tremendous experience.
So we've hit on Team USA, Orleans. You've coached at Loyola Marymount. You played, obviously. If you had to pick between all those things, one single baseball event, what's the most memorable one to you?
Oh, boy, Jacob. That's a really, really good question. I think that 05 team was pretty special. When those guys wound up winning the Cape League title and seeing how happy those dudes were to win it, and then 15 years later, staying in touch with those guys, and those guys are still friends with one another. It's hard to explain, man. But that was personally for me, that would have been a hard thing to top. We haven't won one since, so we're due, right? We need to get back. We got back to the finals in 2013 and got beat. So we would sure like to do it again because it's a terrific feeling. It's a big accomplishment. Pick has won 6 of them. Scott Pickler is a good friend of mine. They've won 6. And Mike Roberts has done a great job. Mike, their team was really good last year, and they're the defending champs. So I think I think our goal every summer is to all 10 of us, all 10 teams, because everybody's really good and anybody can win it. And that's what makes it cool. Winning that Cape League title is pretty special.
So that was your first year as a manager. Your most recent one last summer. There are 6 guys from that pitching staff who are on the MLB top 200 heading into draft night. Guys like Cole Wilcox, who was only up there for a little bit, Jake Eager, Jared Schuster, so many more. What do those guys bring to the table going into the next level of baseball?
Well, that's a good question too. Wilcox is just a big physical, it's a power arm and a power slider. Nick Frasso from Loyola Marymount, extremely athletic, can run it up there mid-90s, good breaking ball, can flash a 70 change. And then you have a kid by the name of Connor Pellerin from Tulane who had an outstanding summer last summer. The guys just don't hit him. They just don't hit him. It was, I think, 13 innings and 24 strikeouts. And then you have those slew of lefties. You have Eater and Simoneris and Schuster. They're all left-handed. They can all really pitch. They have good command. They have good stuff. They're very competitive. They have a good heartbeat for the game. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing who goes in the top 5 rounds. But I'm pretty sure you're going to see. I'd be pretty confident that 4 or 5 or maybe all 6 of those guys get drafted in the top 5 rounds.
Going on to Nick Garcia, he's a D3 guy. I actually had the pleasure of the summer before he was in Orleans. He was with the Onondaga Flames in the NYCBL. I got the pleasure of calling his games there. And back then, he was a two-way player. He played outfield, some infield, a little bit of everywhere on top of pitching. Was there anything you noticed in his approach that seemed a little bit more focused as he sort of made his way into being a PO?
Well, that's a really good question as well. And what I would say to that is that I think when Nick got to the Cape, I think he learned pretty fast that it wasn't Division III. They were coming off a national championship, and he was a dude, and he's a big physical guy. And I think he may have been, he had a good summer. His numbers were good last summer. But I think he learned that he couldn't just pitch with his fastball like he did at Chapman. And I think you talk about guys that really developed. He was one of those guys that really developed a lot and learned a lot last summer. And he's another guy, a big physical righty that he doesn't have a lot of innings on that arm. Like you said, he just started pitching, being a PO. So that's a pretty fresh arm that somebody could take. And I've received a lot of interest from scouts on Nick. His name comes up a lot, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit if he gets picked as well.
All right, Coach, I want to get to know what kind of arm you were back when you played.
I was a poo. Chris, I threw 80 poo. I was just a little soft throwing left-hander, but I could throw strikes. And even now, those lefties up in the Cape that can throw strikes and change speeds, they have some success. And that's what I did. The only reason I got an opportunity to play college baseball was because I was left-handed. If I was right-handed, you'd be talking to somebody else today.
Going back towards some of the guys who might go on draft day, you've probably had a lot of experiences with guys who played for the Birds who then get that call, the Daniel Lynches, who just won a couple of years ago, the Rollisons. What is that moment like, and what are some memories you have of experiencing it with them or hearing from them about it?
Well, you're extremely happy for them, and you hope they're going to spend their money wisely, right? Because I don't think that they really understand how much $2 million or $3 million or $5 million is. I remember back in 2005, we had a kid by the name of Manny Burris, and he's now the AAA hitting coach for the Dodgers. He played a lot of his career with the Giants in the big leagues, and now he's a AAA hitting coach for the Dodgers. And Manny was, no doubt, Orleans' most favorite player at the end of the summer. He stole 37 bases that summer. I thought he should have been the MVP. but there was some dude named Longoria that played for Chatham that was pretty good and had a pretty good summer. And Evan was the MVP. But I remember Manny getting drafted in the first round, and he signed for $1 million. And I called him, and I said, Manny, I said, how does it feel to be a millionaire? And and I'll never forget it, man. I have goosebumps. And he says, it feels good, coach. So I'm sure it feels good to all those guys, right? But like, Raleigh and Lynch and Gilbert and those guys that are going to get picked in the first round, and Adley Rushman, who got, what did he get, $8 million or something last year, right? That's a lot of money. And really deep down, I hope they invest it wisely. And I'm extremely happy for them. Really happy.
So you've talked a lot about the atmosphere, the relationships, the bonds you have with players. You've worked with 19 teams in Orleans. We'll wrap it up here. What's one main message, if you had to pick one, that you want to instill in all the players you've coached with the Firebirds?
It's a good question. You guys asked a lot of good questions. You're well prepared. I tell them they have to enjoy the moment. And my wife and I were real into mindfulness and being present, because the time is so important. I teach math. I've been teaching math for 37 years. It's one of our most valuable, if not the most valuable asset we have, because it's finite. And those guys have a really small window to play college baseball and sign, get to the big leagues, and have a career. And I mean, I'm thinking about that 05 team, and all of those guys, with the exception of Righty, I think he's the last guy that still has an opportunity to go back on pitch. They're finished, and it seems like yesterday. So my message to them every summer is to enjoy every day, because it goes so fast, and enjoy the competition and enjoy the relationships, because those are the things that are going to last. Manny Burris and Brett Pill, who was on that 05 team, and Everett Tiefert, and some of those, Colin Curtis, those guys are still friends, and their career's over. So after they're finished playing and they're 30 or 31 or 32, they play a long time, right? They're 35. They still have 40 to 50 years to live their lives. So it's to just be present and enjoy every day, and take full advantage of the relationships that present themselves.
Thank you very much, Coach. Well, that was all the time we have for the first episode of Meet the Bird Gang, the 2020 Orleans Firebirds Summer, done in modified fashion. For Brandon Ross, Chris Sacchi, and our very special guest, manager Kelly Nicholson, I'm Jacob Kronberg. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for having me.